Good afternoon. This is all about Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things, questions, and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network, a collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. Taking a look at the XVX Bitcoin price right now, trading at 55,000, just below 400. Bitcoin is down about almost 2% over the past 24 hours, according to trade block data. The XPX has been the most reliable Bitcoin reference price for institutions since 2014, with billions in assets under management benchmarked against it. And Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testifying before Congress on pandemic relief response. During the hearing, they mentioned the digital dollar. And joining me now to discuss from Washington, D.C. is the former acting comptroller of the currency, Brian Brooks. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks so much, Christine. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. All right. So we're seeing Powell expecting to see a spike in inflation amid easy fiscal and monetary policy. He mentioned that at the beginning of today's testimony. Some in the crypto community believe there will be strong inflation and Bitcoin will serve as a hedge. But we haven't really seen high inflation. And I wonder, why do you think that is?
Well, Christine, first of all, it's not exactly clear we haven't seen high inflation. There are a lot of critics who question the way that inflation is measured in the economy. You know, if you see what your Uber price was last week or what your coffee price was last week compared to 6 months ago, you will see that they're all higher. And so the first thing is, I'm not sure that the premise is correct. But the second thing is, you've got very smart economists ranging the political spectrum from Neil Ferguson on the right to Larry Summers on the left, and a lot of people in the middle, saying that at this point it's only a matter of time. And that's because inflation depends on how much money you've printed. And we've printed a lot of money in the last 12 months. So I would just say stay tuned before you make that decision.
Okay. You know, Powell and Yellen are also made mention of the digital dollar project. I want to have a listen to that.
We need to be very careful about the use of a digital currency for illicit finance, and an anonymous currency makes that much harder to control.
I don't think that a system that relies entirely on, for example, completely private governance or completely secret information about who's actually owning the digital dollar would not be viable. And the lack of privacy in the Chinese system is just not something we could do here.
Right. So Powell adding to that a balance has to be found, maybe allowing use of wallets outside a central bank, and perhaps referring to non-custodial wallets where transfer can take place there with protections. Yellen also saying that direct payments to citizens via a digital ID is also worth exploring. I wonder to hear your thoughts on the matter, Brian.
Well, Christine, there's a lot in those comments. It's almost hard to know where to begin, but maybe we'll start with the comments that Chairman Powell made about, fully private, fully anonymous transactions. Let's just start there. There are multiple multi-billion-dollar businesses like Chainalysis and Elliptic and CipherTrace that have built their businesses by doing investigations on blockchain. And so I guess what I would say is, nobody in the business believes that these transactions are fully anonymous. I think if you talk to the FBI, for example, or the Justice Department, as opposed to the Fed chair or the Treasury Secretary, you get a very different view about how private and how dangerous these things really are. I actually used to lead a group at Coinbase that worked directly with law enforcement and global intelligence officials to conduct criminal investigations on blockchain. And so I know how searchable and traceable that technology really is. But think about the contradiction in the last thing that was said in that comment, which was, on the one hand, we can't have these anonymous networks, but on the other hand, a system with as much limited privacy as China wouldn't work here. I mean, those two statements seem to me to be in some kind of tension, because in America, we do believe in financial privacy. We really do. That's why we take companies like Facebook to task, or some of the credit bureaus to task, when they have data breaches or when they're using our information in a certain way without our permission. So if we believe that, we need to strike a clearer balance between security, which is important, money laundering enforcement, which is critical, but also financial privacy, which is a basic right we recognize most everywhere else. And I think that's never part of the dialogue here at the level it needs to be.
Yeah, striking the balance. Powell also made mention that a digital dollar will coexist with physical cash. I just wonder, how do you think Bitcoin will fit in and interact in that scenario?
Well, what I think is this, and I know that the chairman also made some comments about stable coins, and so I guess you have to take that comment in as part of this discussion. Bitcoin is the foundation of a blockchain decentralized economy. It's the largest token. It's the one truly, fully decentralized token. And the problem that we have in the crypto economy today is that investors who hold Bitcoin for a long period of time and then want to cash out have no way of doing that on chain, right? They have to basically go to an exchange and turn it into fiat currency, which is a friction-filled process that costs an exchange fee, takes a long time, et cetera, et cetera. Private stablecoins exist on blockchain. They're built on Ethereum or Algorand or Solana or one of these other blockchains and allow Bitcoin to serve as the foundation of a larger financial ecosystem that also has a stable unit of value inside it. And that's why I think the idea of the government-issued digital dollar, while perhaps better than the status quo, while perhaps it would help us, replicate what China has already done, it doesn't fulfill the promise of a network-based economy going into the future the way that private stablecoins do. And so again, that's one of the things we need to think about when we talk about digital dollars is, does it have to be built by the government? Does it really? Because most good things in our lives were built by the private sector. I expect the digital dollar will be another example of that.
Right. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said yesterday, Bitcoin is a speculative crypto asset that won't replace the dollar because of its volatility, but also saying that Bitcoin is a substitute for gold more so than a cash substitute. I wonder, he made these comments at the Bank of International Settlements webinar, caught people in the crypto community by surprise that Powell linked Bitcoin to gold. Is there an evolved understanding of Bitcoin by regulators?
Well, look, I think that's a very smart comment that the chairman made. And, it's funny, any of your viewers who've read Jeff John Roberts' great book, Kings of Crypto, will love the chapter that talks about how people came to realize that the original promise of Bitcoin as a payment mechanism probably is never going to work because the network is slow. But what its value really is using a network algorithm to create scarcity. And that's why it really is turning out to be more like gold. That's why it's performing inversely to the dollar, and that's why it's rising as inflation expectations rise, right, as it's a hedge against all that. So I think what the chairman said is dead on in that respect. Mm-hmm.
President Joe Biden also hasn't yet announced who he wants leading the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, but his rumored frontrunners are University of California, Irvine law professor Mirza Baradaran, or California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation Commissioner Manuel Alvarez. I wonder if you had any thoughts on those picks.
Well, one thing I've learned in this highly politicized environment is that if I were to say a nice thing about either of those two, it would probably doom their chances. Let me just say, I think both of those people are highly talented. They are qualified for the job. Both of them would bring different perspectives from me. But I think, both of them have made comments on crypto and on financial innovation that could be potentially positive. And I look forward to helping get them up to speed and helping them be successful, whoever it turns out to be.
Yeah. Among your accomplishments at the OCC was providing crypto guidance, allowing national banks to hold stablecoin reserves for customers and permitting federally chartered banks to hold crypto for customers. Congresswoman Maxine Waters is calling on President Biden to rescind that guidance. Are you concerned about the upcoming administration and how they could unravel your legacy?
Yeah, I really don't get that. I realize that there's some things agency heads do that are political, but I have to really say this, and let me say it as directly as possible. There's an enormous number of minority holders and particularly minority entrepreneur holders of Bitcoin who see this as a way better way of accessing finance than the traditional venture capital system or the traditional banking system. And I think Chairwoman Waters, who's been such a vocal critic for so many years of the big banks, would want to recognize the availability of a decentralized asset as a counterweight to the power of those banks. But it seems like maybe what this just is anything the Trump administration was in favor of, they have to reflexively oppose. I think that's a mistake. Innovation isn't political. Some things are, but innovation isn't. Innovation brings more people in, is more inclusive, provides alternatives to all the big incumbents that she and some of her colleagues claim to oppose. And I think on carefuler study, I think that she and some of her colleagues will come around on that. It's just too obvious a solution.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and congratulations on becoming the newest member of the board of directors at Spring Labs.
Thank you so much, Christine. I really appreciate it.